Hello everybody, this is Goji73 here with a figure review. It is now time to begin reviewing the latest batch of figures I've been collecting over the past few years, and so let's get started. Starting off our current batch of figures from my previous collection update, here is not one, but two of the same figure, but each with a slight different variation of one another. It is none other than the Y-MSF Gorosauruses. Now, as far as history goes, I already reviewed a Gorosaurus figure before, that being the 6 or 7 inch Gorosaurus by Bandai. But just to recap, just because, Gorosaurus was pretty much your standard T-Rex stand-in for King Kong to fight in King Kong Escapes, which was Gorosaurus' debut at the time, in which he appeared and fought King Kong and got his jaw broken. His second major appearance would be in Destroy All Monsters, where he helped Godzilla and Anguirus fight King Ghidorah. Granted, all the monsters fought, but those three did most of the work. And as far as any other film appearances goes, he had a quick cameo appearance in Godzilla's Revenge, but then again, so did a bunch of other monsters. So, as far as major appearances goes, he appeared in King Kong Escapes and Destroy All Monsters. And that's his history in a nutshell. Now, starting off with detail, I'm just going to pull one of these off to the side since it's practically the same figure, and one is more than enough to get the review started. I just want to let you all know, the paint job on Gorosaurus here is actually not what's on the figure here. I'm going to pull this off to the side and get up a few pictures of what it originally looked like. Here is what the original Gorosaurus looked like with this particular paint job. As you can see, it had a lot more of a blue highlight, and there's a second one where it had a much more prominent green highlight. The reason for this is because the blue one is supposed to represent his appearance in King Kong Escapes, and the green one is supposed to represent his appearance in Destroy All Monsters. However, because I'm a bit of a neat freak when it comes to detail and such, I actually had my particular versions painted to resemble how he looked in Destroy All Monsters, which ironically was a little bit more gray than green, to my knowledge. So, I had both of my Gorosauruses painted by Kaiju Zoo, which is sort of a art group that paints kaiju figures, and they agreed to paint both of my Gorosauruses because, surprise, these are the Gorosaurus figures I will be using from now on in Godzilla and His Amazing Friends, because they're more accurate in paint job, sizing, and a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, I'm a little off topic, so I'm going to get back onto the review. Paint job aside, detailing on here is actually pretty nicely captured for Gorosaurus. He was pretty bumpy in his appearances in both of his movies. And just so you know, this particular version you're looking at right now is the King Kong Escapes version. He has a longer tail and a closed mouth, whereas in comparison, this is the Destroy All Monsters variation. And just to quickly go over the differences, Destroy All Monsters' variation has an open mouth, and the tail is more curved up. So, apart from that though, detailing on both of them is about the same. Yep, pretty bumpy, nicely captured for Gorosaurus. If I had to take paint job into account, even though I had mine custom painted, paint job wouldn't, personally, I didn't really like the paint jobs of how they originally looked. So, detailing and sculpting is pretty decent, paint job not so much. Now on to articulation. Since they're both the same figures, they both have the same amount of articulation, and that pretty much includes the legs. Normally they'd both swivel up and down, but I haven't moved mine in a while, so I don't want to stress it too much. Both arms go up and down as such, and the head rotates as well. It goes 360 degrees. And plus, to quickly go over superpowers really quickly, Gorosaurus doesn't have any superpowers. He is purely a tooth and claw monster. If there's any real notable superpower he has, is that it's not so much a superpower as it is just a signature ability, and that is his infamous kangaroo kick. And now let's get on to sizing. Since I do have a figure of him, here he is, King Kong. as you can see here, sizing is actually pretty nicely captured. Gorosaurus and King Kong were pretty much eye to eye, and it seems pretty nicely done here. And of course, if you want to put them in that signature pose where Gorosaurus kicks him, it matches up pretty nicely, so yeah, sizing's good here. And because I have the figure of him on me currently, here is the 1974 Godzilla. And again, this is a pretty nicely captured sizing of the two. Gorosaurus was slightly shorter than Godzilla. As you can see in Destroy All Monsters, when the two monsters briefly look at one another, Gorosaurus kind of looks a tad bit shorter than Godzilla. So overall, again, nice capturing of the sizing. And before I end this review, I'm just going to pull out one more figure. The Bandai Gorosaurus. Now, as you can see, there are a bunch of differences in the design of both figures. The Bandai Gorosaurus is a little bit more bumpier with its skin texture. It's a little bit more lazier with the paint job if I really had to compare it with the Y-MSF one. Even though I had mine painted, it actually had a little bit of a better job done to it in capturing Gorosaurus' detail, as well as the fact that the Bandai Gorosaurus is a lot more taller than the Y-MSF Gorosaurus. So that's just a quick overview of how they looked like in comparison to one another. And so that just about does it for this review. History is brief, he only appears in 2 movies. Detail is nicely captured, not so much the original paint job that it has. Articulation is pretty basic, nicely captured, and scaling is captured pretty nicely as well. One last thing I forgot to mention, just real quickly. Whereas the King Kong Escapes Gorosaurus only has 5 points of articulation, I believe the Destroy All Monsters has... oh, yes it does. Destroy All Monsters variation has 6 points of articulation. Its arms, its head, its legs, and its tail. So, sorry about that, last minute thing. And, oh, I stand corrected. They both have 6 points of articulation, so 1 added point there for the articulation. So overall, I have to give these figures an 8 out of 10. And I give it that score because everything on the figure is really nicely captured, surprising amount of articulation, pretty nicely captured detail, nicely captured sizing. And overall, if you can't get the Bandai Gorosaurus because it's extremely expensive and hard to come by, these make for some pretty good substitutions for him. Only real gripe is the paint job, which I feel is a bit lazy. And so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this review. That's it for today's figure review. If you like what you see, or what I make, and wish to support me and help me create content faster or more efficiently, you can help me by supporting me on Patreon, and possibly get a video of your own made for you, or win several other prizes. You can also help me by supporting me here on YouTube, as well as Facebook and Twitter for anything else I may make in the future. And so that's it. I'll see you all next time.